Hi, friends. I'm Mrs. Vanderlaan, and today we're going to continue reading from our book, The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. We're going to be reading chapters 18 through 25, and chapter 18 starts on page 42. Chapter 18, The Camouflaged Robot. As you know, reader, Roz had always liked to keep herself as clean as possible, but her desire to stay alive was stronger than her desire to stay clean. And our robot decided it was time she got dirty. Roz was going to camouflage herself. She'd gotten the idea from the stick insect, but Roz quickly realized that camouflaging herself as a twig was out of the question. No, the robot would have to blend into the landscape itself. She began by smearing handfuls of thick mud over her entire body. Then she plucked ferns and grasses from the ground and sank their roots into her new muddy coating. She placed colorful flowers around her face to disguise her glowing eyes, and any bare patches were covered with tree leaves and strips of moss. Our robot now looked like a great tuft of plants walking through the forest. She waited for darkness, and then she padded to the center of a clearing, nestled herself between some rocks, and became part of the landscape. A few hours later, the sky was brightening, the fog was lifting, the nighttime animals were slinking home, and the daytime animals were beginning to stir. It was just an ordinary morning on the island. However, there was that new tuft of plants in that one forest clearing. Only the bees had noticed the tuft. They buzzed around it and completely unaware that the robot was hidden beneath. And so Roz sat there, right in the open, yet completely unseen, and observed the wilderness around her. She watched flowers slowly turn toward the sun. She listened to rodents crawl through the weeds. She smelled the moist, piney air. She felt worms wiggle against her muddy sides. A week later, the tuft of plants was gone, but there was a new clump of seaweed on the shore. A week after that, the clump of seaweed was gone, but there was a new bramble on the mountain. And then there was a new log on the riverbank. Then a new rock in the forest. Chapter 19, The Observations. Clouds scudded through the sky. Spiders spun intricate webs. Berries beckoned to hungry mouths. Foxes stalked hares. Mushrooms rose up from leaf litter. Turtles plopped into ponds. Moss spread across tree roots. Vultures hunched over carcasses. Ocean waves beat against the coastline. Tadpoles became frogs, caterpillars became butterflies. A camouflaged robot observed it all. Chapter 20, The Language of the Animals. It started with the birds. They'd always been skittish when the robot was near. They would stare and screech and then scatter. But now that Roz was camouflaged, she could secretly observe their normal behavior right up close. Roz noticed chickadees fluttering through the same flowers and singing the same song every morning. She noticed a lark who swooped down to the same rock and sang the same song every afternoon. She noticed the same two magpies singing to each other from across the same meadow every evening. After weeks of robotically studying the birds, Roz knew what each bird would sing, and when they would sing, and eventually why they would sing. The robot was beginning to understand the birds. But she was also beginning to understand the porcupines and the salamanders and the beetles. She discovered that all the different animals shared one common language. They just spoke the language in different ways. You might say each species spoke with its own unique accent. When Roz first listened to the chickadees, their songs had sounded like twee, tweedle, twee, tweedle. But now when the chickadees sang, Roz heard, "Oh, what a lovely day it is. Oh, what a lovely day it is." Deer spoke mostly with their bodies. By simply turning her head, a doe could say to her family, "Let's look for clover by the stream." Snakes often hissed to themselves things like, "I know there's a tasty mouse around here somewhere." Bees said very little. They used their wings to buzz a few simple words like nectar and sun and hive. Frogs spent much of their time searching for each other. One would croak, "Where are you? I can't see you." And then another would reply, "I'm over here. Follow my voice." When Roz first stomped across the island, the animal's squawks and growls and chirps had sounded like nothing more than meaningless noises. But she no longer heard animal noises. Now she heard animal words. Chapter 21, The Introduction. There was an hour each morning in the dim light of dawn when all the island animals were safe. You see, a long time ago, they had agreed not to hunt or harm one another during that hour. They called it the Dawn Truce. Most mornings, the island residents would gather in the great meadow and spend the hour chatting with friends. Of course, not everyone attended these gatherings. The bears had never made an appearance, and the vultures just circled high above. But on this particular morning, an unusually large group of animals had come out to discuss some important news. "Settle down, everyone. I have something to say." Swooper the owl hooted to the crowd from the lowest branch of a dead tree. "Last night I saw a mysterious creature right here in this great meadow. It seemed to be covered in grass, so I couldn't get a good look at it, but I think it may have been the monster." Looks of concern swept over the crowd. "What was the creature doing?" said Dart the Weasel. "It was speaking," said Swooper. "It kept repeating the same words over and over again, but each time it sounded a little different. At first it sounded like a cricket, and then it sounded like a raccoon, and then it sounded like an owl." "What was it saying?" said Dig Down the groundhog. "I could be mistaken," said Swooper, "but I think it was saying, 'Hello, my name is Roz.'" The crowd began to chatter. "Just where was this creature?" said Fink the fox. Everyone turned as the owl slowly pointed his wing to a grassy lump in the meadow. It was a rather ordinary-looking grassy lump until it began to move. As you probably guessed, that grassy lump was Roz. She had been there the whole time, camouflaged, watching, listening, and with all the animals looking at her, she decided to introduce herself. The crowd stared in disbelief as the grassy lump started shaking and bulging upward and crumbling apart. And there was the robot. Then, using her body and voice, the robot spoke to the animals in their own language. "Hello, my name is Roz." The crowd gasped. Swooper fluttered up from his crouch and screeched, "It's the monster!" "I am not a monster," said Roz. "I am a robot." A flock of sparrows suddenly took off. "Leave us alone," squeaked Dart as he crouched low in the grass. "Return to whatever horrible place you came from." "I come from here," said Roz. "I have spent my whole life on the island." "Why haven't you spoken to us sooner?" screeched the owl from higher up in the tree. "I did not know the animal language until now," said the robot. Crown Point, the buck, had heard enough, and he slipped into the forest with his family. "So what do you want from us?" growled Fink. "I have observed that different animals have different ways of surviving," said the robot. "I would like each of you to teach me your survival techniques." "I'm not going to help you," screeched the owl from the very top of the tree. "You seem so unnatural." "The monster is just waiting to gobble us up," shrieked Dig Down, and the groundhog disappeared into a hole. "I will not gobble anyone up," said Roz. "I have no need for food." "You don't need food?" Fink relaxed a bit. "Well, I need food, and lots of it. Why don't you make yourself useful and find me some food?" "What would you like me to do?" said Roz. "Can you hunt?" The fox smiled at a hare on the other side of the gathering. "It's almost time for breakfast." "I cannot hunt, but I could gather berries." The fox's smile disappeared. "Berries? I'm hungry for meat, not berries. Good luck to you, Roz. You're going to need it." And the fox trotted away. Roz looked up at the tree, but the owl had gone. And when the robot looked down again, she realized that everyone else had gone too. Chapter 23, The New Word. A new word was spreading across the island. The word was Roz. Everyone was talking about the robot, and they wanted nothing to do with her. "I don't think I'll ever feel comfortable knowing that Roz is on the prowl." I hope Roz camouflages herself as a rock forever. Shh, there's Roz now. Let's get out of here. Roz wandered the island, covered in dirt and green growing things, and everywhere she went, she heard unfriendly words. The words would have made most creatures quite sad, but as you know, robots don't feel emotions, and in these moments, that was probably for the best. Chapter 23, The Wounded Fox. My face, my beautiful face, somebody help! Fink the fox was lying on a log, howling in pain, with a face full of long, sharp quills when Roz appeared. Isn't there anyone else who can help? Would you like me to leave? Said the robot. No, please don't go. I'll take what I can get. What happened? I didn't think that porcupine could see me in the bushes, but when I went for his throat, suddenly there were quills in my face. Why did you go for his throat? Why do you think? Because I was hungry. If you had not attacked the porcupine, you would not have quills in your face. Yes, Roz, I know that, but a fox has got to eat. I just didn't expect him to put up such a fight. Look, there are even quills on my paws. I can't walk. My face is numb. I could die if you don't help me. What would you like me to do? Said the robot. I'd like you to pull out these quills. Roz calmly knelt beside Fink and said, I will pull out the quills. The robot started to tug on a quill, but it snapped off in her fingers. Fink yelped and said, Pinch it closer to the skin. So Roz pinched the broken quill closer to the skin and then pulled very slowly. She pulled it out. The fox winced in pain and said through his teeth, Please, Roz, pull them out faster. This is agony. Roz quickly tugged out another quill, then another and another. The fox lay perfectly still, eyes closed tightly, wind whistling through his nose until every single quill had been removed and placed in a neat pile beside him. Fink struggled to his feet. Thanks, Roz. I owe you one. The fox smiled briefly, and then he limped away. Chapter 24, The Accident. As Roz wandered through springtime, she saw all the different ways that animals entered the world. She saw birds guarding their eggs like treasures until the chicks finally hatched. She saw deer give birth to fawns who were up and running in a matter of minutes. Many newborns were greeted by loving families. Some were on their own from their very first breath. And as you're about to find out, a few poor goslings would never even get a chance to hatch. Roz was climbing down one of the forest cliffs when the accident happened. The wind started blowing out of the north, and suddenly clouds were rushing over the island. With the clouds came a spring shower, a downpour actually, and there was our robot, clamping her hands onto a wet block of stone on the side of the cliff. But the block couldn't handle the extra weight, and as the heavy robot hung there, cracks suddenly shot through the stone and it started breaking apart. Down went the robot, plummeted into the treetops below. She crashed through branch after branch before finally hooking an arm around one. Then she dangled there, gently swinging as rocks roared past her on the way to the forest floor. When the dust settled, Roz shimmied down the tree trunk. The ground was littered with broken rocks and splintered wood and pulverized shrubs. And within all that rubble was a goose nest that had been torn to shreds. 2 dead geese and 4 smashed eggs lay among the carnage. The robot stared at them with her soft, glowing eyes, and something clicked deep inside her computer brain. Roz realized she had caused the deaths of an entire family of geese. Chapter 25, The Egg. As Roz stood in the rain staring down at those poor, lifeless geese, her sensitive ears detected a faint peeping sound coming from somewhere nearby. She followed the peeps over to a clump of wet leaves on the ground, and when she peeled back the leaves, she discovered a single, perfect goose egg sunk in the mud. "Mama! Mama!" peeped a tiny, muffled voice from within the egg. The robot gently cradled the fragile thing in her hand. Without a family, the unhatched gosling inside would surely die. Roz knew that some animals had to die for others to live. That was how the wilderness worked. But would she allow her accident to cause the death of yet another gosling? After a moment, the robot started to walk. Carefully holding the egg, she moved through the forest and away from that sad scene. But she didn't get far before Fink burst out of the bushes. "What happened?" the fox panted. "The whole forest was shaking." "There was an accident," said the robot. "I was climbing those cliffs when the rocks started to fall." "You should be more careful," said Fink as he checked out the robot's new scrapes and dents. "I'll need your help if I ever have more porcupine trouble." "I will be more careful." "What do you have there?" said Fink, looking up at Roz's hands. "A goose egg." "I love goose eggs. Can I eat it?" "No." "Please." "No." "Why do you want it?" the fox scowled. "I thought you didn't eat food." "You may not have this egg, Fink." The fox sighed. He scratched his chin and then he started sniffing the breeze. His nose had found the scent of the dead geese. "You can keep your egg," he said as he trotted toward the cliffs. "I smell something better." The robot walked on through the misty forest for a long time, until she was standing beneath a sprawling oak tree. Roz placed the egg on a pad of moss. Then she snatched grass and twigs from the ground and delicately wove them together to make a little nest. She placed the egg inside the nest, placed the nest on her flat shoulder, and climbed up into the branches.